An Israeli Air Force drone has crashed into the sea because of a malfunction. It happened when the drone was patrolling the border with Lebanon, coming amid tensions between the two countries over the offshore gas pipeline, which is set to start delivering natural gas to Israel within weeks. Well, in the meantime, there's been more negotiations on Friday over this dispute. The US mediator, Amos Hochstein, had another round of talks with Lebanese officials. He says very good progress was made, but more work is still required to reach a final agreement. These talks will eventually help determine which oil and gas resources belong to which country and pave the way for more exploration. For more now, I am joined by Rafael Yerushalmi in the studio. He's the IDF's former senior intelligence officer. Rafael, so these talks obviously seen as really crucial between the two countries. But the last time that Hochstein was in the region in Lebanon talking to officials, he said the same thing. He said that some progress had been made, but not yet enough to reach a final agreement. Same thing was said on Friday after those talks. What is it really going to take to reach an agreement? I'm sure everyone's so eager to know.
I think the Lebanese are a bit shy with putting their pen on the paper and sign, because the Israelis have really this time, because of a certain American pressure, agreed to the terms that more or less the Lebanese desired. So there is not much more that Lebanon can ask for. There is inside the Lebanon a division between the government. The government negotiated indirectly through the Americans with the Israelis, leaving out the Hezbollah. So the Hezbollah is not very happy, is a bit worried about this dialogue, kind of dialogue between the Lebanese government and the Israeli government. And it might be that it's putting pressure on the Lebanese politicians. They're a bit afraid to sign such an agreement. It will be signed in the end, because it is the interest of both countries, especially of the Lebanon, who is now going through a terrible economic crisis, a real tragedy, and they need absolutely these resources. As you saw before on the former subjects about Russia, we are going to be able, with the Lebanese, to fill a void in the giving energy to Europe, gas and oil. So it is very important for both countries to come quickly to an agreement. I think the optimism of Mr. Hochstein is justified. In the end, there will be an agreement, because the Israelis this time are really in the mind to let the Lebanese have their way and have some of the cake.
I mean, you can just imagine, Rafael, that for any two countries in the world, how hard it is to reach an agreement on anything involving their countries, let alone two countries like Israel and Lebanon that are considered enemies and that are considered to not have diplomatic relations with one another.
Yes, but because we are enemies, and we would not like to be enemies forever, the Israelis are showing themselves more lenient in the vague hope, in the far future, but in the vague hope that this will be maybe a first step to normalizing other relations, economic or otherwise, with the Lebanese, and also to weaken the position of the Hezbollah in the structure, the political structure of the Lebanon.
And how much of a sense of urgency, I know you briefly mentioned this prior, but how much of a sense of urgency is there to get a deal as soon as possible, especially seeing that Hezbollah is threatening or intensifying its threats to go to war?
Well, Hezbollah will threaten anyway, whether we sign tomorrow or next week. The threat will remain. There is also another way of going around that threat of the Hezbollah, is by giving credit to Hassan Nasrallah, that he put so much pressure, he frightened the Israelis into signing. So if there is a signing, he will come up and say, it's thanks to me, because I frightened the Israelis. He already said it. So, but when it will happen, then once it's signed, it all depends how the everyday work will be going on both parts. I mean, this border is not a border about the sovereignty of any country. It's an economical border. So we will see that the threat is there, and that's why there are many drones. One fell in the sea today, but that's why many drones are watching this area closely.
Also, it's believed that September will be decisive and important for the two countries in terms of reaching this decision. What are Israeli officials saying, and what is all of this saying about the economy of both of these countries?
So first of all, September and October are important on both parts, but mainly also Israel, because it's before the elections. This agreement, some people in the political circles said that you couldn't sign such an agreement before there are elections, and an interim government should not sign such an agreement. Legally, they can sign because, as I said, it's an economic agreement, not a sovereign territory agreement. What is important now, I said it a few times before, the only country today in the world that can save Lebanon from its economic crisis is Israel. Would they normalize? We could give them food, we could give them medicine, we could rehabilitate all their telecommunication infrastructure, and we could really revive the Lebanese economy. It's really, really a shame that there is no peace between the two countries, and we have to now beat the iron while it's hot, and if this little agreement can move something forward, then we have to take the opportunity.
Raphael, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming into the studio. The former senior intelligence officer speaking to i24 News of the IDF, Raphael Yerushalmi there.